this idea and belief that consuming fat can cause you to then be fat is one that is grossly inaccurate, and it still baffles me that people within the 21st century that we live in still believe this to be true, and are essentially scared of fat, scared to eat it, scared that it's bad for them, scared that it's only going to make them fat or not help them lose weight. And I really wanted to make a video about the fallacy of this belief, really, and just how what this belief tends to then lead to, which is a diet low in fat and high in carbohydrate, which I'll go into in a moment, tends to cause the very problems that they're looking to avoid, so ill health and obesity. We can look at some statistics to back that up. I was doing some research a little earlier, reading on one of many reputable sites that I regularly visit. This particular one is westernaprice.org. An article I was reading was written in 2000, looking at a study that analysed fat consumption over a period of 50 to 60 years in the US diet. It looked at a period from 1920 up until about 1970 or 80, and this study showed that dietary fat from an animal source has actually decreased from 83% down to 62% in that time, and that is a decrease of well over 20%, while conversely carbohydrate intake through refined and processed foods and simple sugars has gone up massively, a huge 60% in that same period of time. So with what people believe to be the cause of weight gain and obesity, because it doesn't take much to realise that obesity and ill health are rising year upon year to this very day, and unfortunately look set to continue for some time, that the very cause of that in their mind is fat, but in actuality, statistically speaking, fat consumption is down. So if fat is the culprit, then surely it should be on the rise in proportion to the rise in incidence of obesity and ill health, but that's clearly not the case. We can take that statistic and look at it and apply it into a real life example right now. Go into any supermarket, look along the shelves, look in shopping trolleys and baskets. What proportion of what people are buying or what's on the shelves is actually a source of fat from real food, and what proportion of it is carbohydrate, refined, processed food based? I see a supermarket full of processed foods, carbohydrates, refined sugars, simple sugars, whereas proportionally wise, I don't see any more fat products, sources of dietary fat. After all, if you're eating real fats, it can only come from certain products. You can't reinvent or create new products that contain real sources of fat. You can sure as hell create man-made processed products that have modified fat in them, but that isn't real fat. So I'm talking modified fat being hydrogenated fat, and that is a problem in itself. Incidentally, that statistic showed that over that same period of time, hydrogenated fat, which would be typically found in the processed foods and man-made foods, has gone up a massive 400%. But the bigger picture is these refined, processed, simple carbohydrate foods that people tend to buy, and within that, hydrogenated fat tends to be prevalent. So in my mind, it's clear that carbohydrate intake is the real culprit, and we'll look at that in a moment, but I just want to look at the idea that fat can be bad for you, when fat is one of three major nutrients that we as humans need within our body, along with protein and carbohydrates. To say inherently that fat is bad is to go against nature's design, and that is nonsensical in every way to me. Added to that, the actual benefits that consuming fat has on the body, it's vital for many bodily functions. Let's take a look at a few of them now. Dietary fat is essential for providing cell structure. Somewhere around 50% of cell structure comes from the intake of dietary fat. It's an essential source of vitamins A and D. Dietary fat provides the body with essential fatty acids, which we don't produce. So if you're not getting them from your diet, then you're not getting them, full stop. Dietary fats help with transportation of fat-soluble vitamins, critical. Dietary fat and the cholesterol found in dietary fat is integral to hormone production. And then there's more subtle things like fat being important for body insulation and protection of vital organs. So to me, it's clear on two levels. One, from a statistic and in a level of looking at what's actually happening with people's fat consumption dropping and health and obesity rates going up, or ill health and obesity rates going up, and just how vital fat is to the body. So both those two angles come together to make me under no illusion that fat is absolutely vital to your body. And let's now go back to this prevalence in carbohydrates and refined foods. What happens is when you naturally limit or even exclude fat from your diet, under the premise that it's better for you or will help you lose weight, people's carbohydrate intake through these refined, simple and processed foods naturally goes up. And why is that? Because essentially it boils down to this. Fat and protein are heavily related because fat in its most abundant source comes from animal products. Animal products and fish are largely protein based. So when you reduce fat, you indirectly, even if it is unknowingly, decrease your protein intake. So your dietary carbohydrate intake then forms the bulk of your nutrient intake. And if that's coming from these poor sources that I've talked about already, this will happen. Your blood sugar levels will be mismanaged. You'll reach a point where you ingest these foods and high blood sugar level is brought about. Energy levels are spiked because these foods break down very, very simply within the body. And the body doesn't want that condensed acute form of energy, so it releases insulin in huge volumes from the pancreas into the blood to extract that blood glucose from the blood and draw it into the cells. This knee-jerk reaction causes a huge dip in blood sugar level, commonly known as a crash, and I think it's something that we can all relate to. A crash in blood sugar would typically leave someone tired, feeling sleepy, mentally foggy, often cranky or grumpy, and definitely hungry, ravenous. They want to eat again very, very quickly, soon after eating whatever meal caused this problem in the first place. So what do? They typically then reach out for those very same types of food that caused this problem, because as I've already said, these foods break down very, very quickly, so they get a pick-me-up out of it. But what happens in the long term is they stay in this cycle of glucose peaks and troughs. You get a cycle of crashes and surges of energy, and this has two effects on the body. One is that it leaves the body guessing to when its next sustainable source of energy is coming in. So what that will do is cause the body to slow metabolism, because the last thing the body wants to do is expend the very precious energy it has on these metabolic activities that really take all the resources away from the body. So it will lower or slow those processes down, which is clearly not good for your health, and these metabolic processes are vital to sustaining the very life you have itself. In addition to that, it's not an efficient way to use energy within the body. So you decrease your body's efficiency to use the energy that you're bringing in. Coupled with that, the second effect of this process of, or this phenomenon of poor blood sugar management, is that you cause this excess energy to be stored as body fat, because fat is the densest form of energy we have and we can store within our body. So this excess energy is shuttled into the cells and stored as fat, not only to counter that huge surge of energy, but to also provide a backup, a source of energy to the body in those times when the body doesn't know where it's going to get its next source of energy from. So it's vital to sustain bodily function. So in actual fact, this shift of nutrient intake to a high carbohydrate based intake, typically of these bad foods, is causing the very problems that people are trying to avoid. It's making them unhealthy, and it's causing, or at least preventing them from losing weight. So I just want to touch on cholesterol now, because I'm essentially telling you that you need to up your fat intake, or not reduce it in the first place. It needs to be a prominent source of nutrient on a daily basis within your diet. And the typical response I get to that is, well, won't that give me high cholesterol? Won't it affect my cholesterol? And I just wanted to clear that up. In actuality, the process, the mismanagement of your blood sugar level is far more likely to cause you to bring about high cholesterol. And that is because, yes, as most people know, meat in particular contains cholesterol, but we also produce cholesterol within our bodies, and that's a lesser known fact. And when you have mismanagement of your blood sugar level, and this huge volume of insulin is constantly having to be released, this has an impact on the liver, which produces cholesterol and turns it into steroid hormone. When insulin is released in this volume, it inhibits this conversion of cholesterol into steroid hormones, so you have higher volumes of cholesterol in the serum. And in addition to that, these poor quality foods in themselves that are causing this spike in blood sugar level and the ill health that brings have a huge detrimental effect to our arterial health. The free radicals that are typically found in these foods damage the cell wall, damage the arterial structure. And as I touched on at the beginning, fat, more specifically cholesterol, is an integral component in providing cell structure. So wherever you get arterial damage through poor dietary practices, you'll get high cholesterol serum because it's there to repair and alleviate the damage that's being caused by your diet. So in actual fact, the very nature of decreasing your fat from intake from dietary sources can and often does elevate cholesterol in itself, and the only way to combat that is to normalize your fat intake, not reduce it further, which is a common instruction that people are given. Quite ironic, really. A lot of this is why I wanted to talk about this topic, because a lot of it, a lot of the thinking is so reversed that what people are trying to avoid, they're actually bringing about by putting this belief that fat is bad for you into practice. So my advice to you is eat the best available fats that you can find. Eat them regularly as part of a balanced meal. Because if you're eating fat to any degree, trust me when I say this, you cannot overeat. Fat is a very energy dense and nutritious food. So you have much more balanced meals, and it's quite easily done to overeat with a high carbohydrate meal to balance out these crashes and to get your blood sugar levels back up, because these foods burn off very quickly. So bringing fat back into the diet will balance that out. And just what are good fats? Good fats come from organic meats and wild fish, through coconut oil, olive oil, and nuts and seeds to a lesser extent. I'm talking fats from real foods of the highest quality. Eat them freely and know that they're not only improving your health, but they're combating the weight problems that you may be facing and not adding to them. I absolutely assure you that is true. Try it for yourself and see how amazing you feel and how quickly weight loss can happen when you balance out your fat intake from good sources with the other nutrient groups. Thanks for watching.